Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and for a change, I will allow the other half of your broadcast team here on the leader, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage, introduce himself today. Go for it, my man.
My name is Barry White. I'm silky and smooth.
You sound nothing like Mr. White. You don't even sound like Isaac Hayes or Chef from South Park. So,
okay, children.
That's a little better. That's a little better. Our impressions, you know, people do listen to us for some Steelers stuff. The impression thing, I have a feeling we would get like 2 or 3 listeners, and it's just people that would accidentally click on it or tap on it with their phone. Maybe Terry. She's technically challenged. She would hit
it would be an accident.
Yeah, it'd be an accident. Yay, we got another listener. All right. I wish people would accidentally subscribe and on YouTube and accidentally leave some reviews on iTunes. Cough, cough. No, I'm not sick. I'm not sick. Just hinting. Just hinting. I keyed. You know, we have things and stuff to talk about again today. It's amazing. The Steelers are like, they're up to 2 moves now from 1. They doubled their moves. Actually 3, but I'm kind of putting an asterisk behind it because we got all excited yesterday when someone mistook. There was a case of mistaken identity with Big Dan McCullers, who I want to love Big Dan McCullers. If Big Dan McCullers, listen, is nothing personal against you, but it was kind of underwhelming to see that he signed the 1-year deal instead of Dan Williams, formerly of the Raiders and Cardinals. I was like, yes, the Steelers got a nice cheat. They got another. Look at this deal. They are winning free agency. We were all like celebrating, fireworks going off in our head, and then it was no correction. Dan McCullers. Oh,
yeah.
Sigh.
What are you gonna do? Poor Big Dan. You know, maybe if he's listening and seeing all that, it'll light a fire. Maybe the new defensive line coordinator, Dunbar, maybe he's going to come in and kick him in his butt and get him lit up. Who knows? If I agree with Joe Green, if he would just play mad, that guy could be a terror. But he plays like Winnie the Pooh instead of like a grizzly bear.
Yeah, I wonder if I got to look this up. Usually I have a pretty good pulse on which players are active on social media. I need to see if Dan McCullers has like a Twitter or him. And then what we need to do on like a Friday night or a Saturday morning is get Steeler Nation to just send him all kind of angry tweets. And maybe that'll get under his skin and he'll go out and then just pretend that the guy under the helmet has a Twitter icon. It's like one of those dumb videos you see online where somebody puts like, you know, like the a network logo or someone else's big head on there. That's what we need. It might get him like riled up. It might either that or he needs I've been plowing through the Avengers movies now from start to finish. There's like, I don't know, like a bajillion of them. And the whole Bruce Banner thing, i.e. the Hulk, is because everyone keeps trying to pattern this super soldier serum that Captain America was given to turn him into a superhero, the first Avenger, right? And that's what Big Dan needs. He needs, don't make me angry. Because it's like literally, I don't think anything makes him angry the way we see the play. It's just, you know, he's a mountain of a man that can't be moved. But, you know, it's funny. I was talking with my cousin about this because as soon as I saw it's a Dan Williams, and we're like, yeah, all right. You know, he texts me too because he gets alerts and stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, it's Dan McCullers. He was like, why did we sign that guy for? Yeah, I'm throwing you under a bus, Brad. Just what a wasted signing, blah blah blah. Like okay, but you know, those are the type of things. He goes, does he even have a career sack? And I'm like, Yeah, I think so. I don't know. You know what? I honestly don't know, Brian, and I can't remember even from yesterday looking that I recall. I think Dan like swallowed someone once, and it was either like a running back. It was like the what's the thing I'm looking for? Austin Powers. The word I can't say because we're a clean family show. The fat bee.
Hey, listen, this is the gig with our boy Dan. First of all, he's the water boy. That's what I'm starting to think. We need to have somebody tell him that his amygdala oblongata or whatever the hell it is.
Medulla oblongata.
That's the one. Medulla oblongata is why alligators is angry, and it's not because Mama said. And maybe he'll be mad and go and tell him the other guy on the other team. That guy in the middle right there, he said your mama was ugly. And well, maybe that'll work it out.
Yeah, that's what I meant by the Hulk. He needs like
I agree.
Somebody to turn him green and his pants rip and do whatever else. Otherwise, he's just the mild manner Bruce Banner, and it's just like, that guy's not too exciting. By the way, 1.5 career sacks.
Yeah, I was getting to that. 4 years, 1.5 career sacks, half a sack in 15, and 1 sack in 16.
Yeah, and 42 games he's appeared in. I can't say he's played a lot of snaps. I know he started in spells. Last year he was pretty much non-existent other than special teams. He was out there a couple times, maybe goal line package or something of that nature. So this signing pretty much is it's a depth thing. It's a guy who already knows the system. It's a guy that's going to come to camp and hope to not lose his job to somebody else that could be drafted or brought in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the Steelers are protecting themselves with this 1-year deal they signed him to, because if he comes in, if they don't add any depth, if there's no backup nose tackle, he's cheap depth. And at least he knows the defense. But if they bring somebody in who pushes him, they can cut bait if they want to, and it doesn't really cost them much of anything.
You want to talk about mean things. I was talking about searching things on Google, and I was looking up the other signing. I'll get that in a second. This is actually a funny story of just Google and autofill. But the Dan McCullers thing is actually the Steel Curtain Rising has a headline that says, April Fool's arrives early. Nope, Steelers re-signed Daniel McCullers to a 1-year contract. Seriously. Sometimes you really must take care with what you wish for, yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, that's maybe a little mean-spirited there. I mean, how can you expect so much from a guy that does like barely plays? I don't know. It's I get it. He was like the largest human being on the team until Alejandro Villanueva was signed. So 6'7", 352 is what's showing on Pro Football Reference, which is my website of choice to look up all of these crazy facts. So I don't know, man. I don't know. He needs the Hulk up. But there's other news. And speaking of searching for it, I went to type in Morgan into Google, and the first thing is Morgan Freeman. And I said, wow, if he could play for the Steelers, that would be pretty amazing. Because he's like 90-some years old, and just thinking about Morgan Freeman already puts his voice in your head. He has such a defined voice, not quite your blend of what do you want to say, Isaac Hayes,
silky and smooth.
Silky and smooth, yes, silky and smooth. You sound like the ingredients for the chocolate bunny my child will get next week for Easter weekend in her basket. Silky and smooth. But yes, Steelers make a move. I was shocked at this one. I have a few friends that are Packers fans. I was speaking with them, and apparently Morgan Burnett, who was signed to a 3-year deal, very cheaply this season, most of it's bonus money, and it's going to be spread out. More accounting funny money tricks. They really don't have the money to spend under the cap, folks. And now that they keep doing all of these conversions and bonuses and stuff, they're handcuffing. They're not going to make moves for like the next 4 years in free agency, provided if Le'Veon Bell gets his big deal, but who knows what's going on with that. We'll leave that for another day. But Morgan Burnett, I was surprised because the safety market wasn't moving. A lot of people, including Ron Cook, who has a show on 93.7 The Fan locally in Pittsburgh and writes periodically for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He said the Steelers, it is huge. He ripped them for not getting Tyrann Mathieu, who signed for $7 million in 1 year with the Houston Texans. I never thought, as much as I would like the Honey Badger on the team, I wasn't sold on, I don't know, the amount of money it would cost and how many games he might play, 1 year or multiple years, or what kind of deal it would take to bring him in. Is he a playmaker? Yes, absolutely. Does he remind me of somebody like a Troy Polamalu? Definitely, definitely. But I just wasn't so certain that if you brought him in that he was going to be the answer. Maybe he stays healthy, maybe he doesn't, but I thought they would have been reaching versus what they end up getting in Burnett. What'd you think about Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger?
Well, I like the Honey Badger. I like him as a player. It would have been great if he could have come here. It would have given them a cog that I'm sure they could have done some creative things with. But I don't like, a little bit of his injury history. I'm not 100% positive that he is really what they need in a long-term or a short-term solution if he can't stay on the field. We'll have to see how it goes. And at the money they'd have had to give him to get him to, here's the thing, right? He says, I want to go to a defensive culture. I want to go to a team that's dedicated to winning, that has a rich history in pursuing championships and all this stuff that he said, right? Where did he end up? Houston.
Yeah. Yeah, no history. They've been around 15 years. I think they had the 15-year logos on their jerseys last year. They entered the league in 2002, I believe. 2002, 03,
they've had
something like that.
They've had a solid defense the last few years. I'll grant you that. Do they have a tradition of winning? I don't know. Is it really a defensive culture? I don't know. I don't think so.
It's Romeo Crennel.
Look, but the bottom line comes down to, money. It's always money. We've learned that with Le'Veon Bell. We're going to learn that with probably players going forward at a time. It's just about the money, but it is primarily about the money. If the money is close enough and there's a bunch of other good peripheral things there, maybe don't take the highest offer. But I think 99% of the time, whoever has the most money makes the deal.
You should ask Eric Weddle about that. I remember
exactly.
He wanted to be part of this whole culture of winning. That looks like that's going to be working out very well for him as far as 2018 is already concerned with the Baltimore Ravens. We haven't really talked about, outside of the Cleveland Browns, any of the moves that the other two AFC North teams have made. And I want to get back to Burnett here in a second, but the Bengals, they traded with the Bills and they picked up a lineman, and we said they desperately needed that. And it looks like they're at least on the right thought process. I mean, the Ravens are hosting every wide receiver imaginable, and there was like an anonymous quote, and this is something that if you've listened to this show for a while or paid attention and read some articles on Steel City Underground that I've written, all I have said that Joe Flacco has ever done is air ball and jump ball. And they throw the ball down the field and they get a pass interference call, and one of these beat writers or NFL insiders, as they call them, he had an anonymous quote that said, I had no interest. All it seems that they want to do is throw the ball down the field and get a flag. And I'm like, holy cow, someone else has finally acknowledged this. This is coming from players within the league now, which is pretty awesome to validate my point there. So, the Ravens are still, who'd they sign? They got Crabtree, who's now getting up there in years, and they're still trying to get some other people. Mike Wallace is gone now, and Jeremy Maclin was released from there, and they just, they got a lot of holes to fill as far as their team. So, but I think today's topic is whether or not the Steelers are maybe better, at least defensively. I think offensively they're just about the same, but I mean, we could cover that too, provided Bell returns.
Right.
I think that this Burnett signing, everybody was waiting for Tyrann Mathieu to make moves, and I think in the middle of this, none of the safeties, none of the guys out there, Trey Boston, there's a few others, was that Michael Thomas, we were talking about him on the last podcast because we were talking about, hey, there might be a move soon, and hours later, I think that was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. At 1 a.m., I think around that time, I had an alert on my phone that said, hey, Morgan Burnett expected to sign with the Steelers. I didn't even know that was on the table. That was fantastic news for me. Now, a lot of people are going to talk. We just got done talking Honey Badger and injuries. Injuries are a part of the game. Maybe not injured reserve type injuries. But Burnett has been somewhat of a solid guy, and he can play everywhere on the field too, and I mean everywhere, not just free safety, which they're looking to replace, but also strong safety. Has a history of playing both. Also corner, linebacker. This guy everywhere. So even if he's not the starting free safety, you don't sign a multi-million dollar long-term deal to sit on the bench. He is definitely in their plans for the future.
The safety market is interesting because another name you forgot, Eric Reed. Also out there. And I read a piece, and I don't remember who wrote it, so I'm not going to credit them, and I'll pretend it was just me knowing this. Said that Morgan Burnett wanted $10 million. That's what he was aiming for. He couldn't get $5 million.
Yeah.
So it is, and in that article it talks about agents for safeties are basically saying that they're not getting calls. And is it Eric Reed and his, anthem protest issues? Is it that people are now devaluing the safety position? I don't know. Or is it just that they feel comfortable with who they have enough that they're not willing to spend heavily, to bolster that position? Once Kurt Coleman got his deal done, that was it. I mean, he got a nice deal, $16 million. But that's that's the exception that's proven the rule for safeties this year. They're not getting paid. So who knows what happens as going forward. But the Burnett piece, I do agree. I think he has some. He's more than a bridge player for them. It's not just
starter. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's not just a guy to carry them forward. And we'll talk about John Bostic, but Burnett, I think, is a guy that they have as a long-term plan. There's a plan in place for him. That doesn't mean it won't change. It doesn't mean that they couldn't draft a guy who comes in and essentially does more than he can offer. Burnett is flexible. He can play the free nickel. He's done a lot of different things. So, it gives them flexibility when they are going to draft. It gives them flexibility with Sean Davis to decide is strong safety the right route for him, or should we move him over to free? It's a good, solid signing, I think, and I agree. I think that it's not a stopgap for them. This is a guy that they think may have some years left in him. I don't know how many, but some.
Well, yeah, he's 29. And, this was I think Ryan Clark turned 29 later in the year when he was signed by the Steelers. Burnett's birthday is in January. I want to say Clark's was in October. And they got about, 4 years, maybe 5 years. I think Clark finally retired at 35, but he played a year with the Redskins. So I was making the exact comparisons about where these guys were in their career at that point, and near identical statistics-wise. Even statistics-wise, someone tried to compare to Mike Mitchell, who was let go, in order to make room for Burnett. Is Burnett that much better? And what they failed to put in that statistic was tackles. And Burnett has a lot of them. And we're not even counting where Pro Football Focus or any of these sites that do the advanced metrics and analytics are concerned with missed tackles on top of that. So I think it was just, it's a breaking point with the Steelers secondary. I mean, Carnell Lake was shown the door. Robert Golden's out of there. William Gay's out of there. Mike Mitchell's out of there. The Steelers they're looking to do something different. There's definitely a different path here, which is where we're kind of going with are they better? Are they setting themselves up to be better than they were where they left off at the end of a disappointing season? And just to go back to this was the one thing, and I heard this from one of my buddies, but I had to look it up based on, you were saying Burnett about $5 million a year. It was 14.5 actually for the 3-year contract. He was asking for 8.5 according to Acme Packing Company, which is one of the SB Nation sites. So I pulled that up. But yeah, even I wanted to go back too, and I made that comment about injuries, and Burnett had ripped up his knee one season, but that was early on, maybe even his rookie year or something like that. He gets banged up here or there. The most games he missed 5 back in 2015. He missed 1 in 2016. He missed 4 last year, but it's not too far off the beaten path of a banged up Mike Mitchell last year, who missed 3 games and and actually only started 12 for the entire year, so he didn't even start one. There's 4 games he didn't start, missed 3 total. You know what? Not really. Mitchell wasn't really known as an interception machine, and he hadn't forced a whole lot of fumbles either. During his time here with the Steelers, 4 forced fumbles, and I'm trying to find the picks here. I know it's not many. Let me see. Is that 3.5? No. The sacks non-existent. Not a sack the entire time he was with the Steelers. Jeez, I wouldn't have guessed that. I mean, I was trying to rack my brain for Dan McCullers earlier, and I can't believe that. I would have thought that Mitchell at least had one somewhere along the line. Nope, does not blitz apparently. Interceptions, 4 interceptions. So we're talking about 4 years. You could have the numbers of 8 seasons in Green Bay for Burnett. He's had 9 and 8 forced fumbles. So that would be 4 and 4.5 there. So you could expect maybe about the same production, but really where it comes down to is tackling. And if you look lifetime, 9 years in the league for Mike Mitchell, 342 tackles. We've got 511 for Morgan Burnett and 1 less season. And we're already talking about how he missed some games here, there, and otherwise in his early part of his stages of his career. And 2 years ago, he has over 150 more tackles than Mike Mitchell does, with far less games, or with Mitchell having far more games, I should say. Mitchell has 137 games to Burnett's 102. That's 2 full seasons more, and he has 150 less tackles, and they're going to be playing the same position. That is absolutely mind-blowing to me. So I'm going to automatically say where Bostic, I was kind of tempering my expectations and saying, everyone slow your roll. He's not the next Ryan Shazier, et cetera, et cetera. Here, you may be taking a downgrade with Bostic, but he's definitely better than Sean Spence. We already know that, just by virtue of name recognition there. But Burnett, though, already appears that his floor is probably Mike Mitchell's ceiling. This guy, unless he regresses with age, and we've seen with safeties, they play a lot longer in the league. I don't know. I think he's an instant upgrade. I'm that confident that I will put my money where my mouth is and say that Burnett is an instant upgrade over Mike Mitchell, and automatically makes that secondary better for the 2018 season.
I don't disagree with you. And if you remember when we were looking at the Green Bay game this year, we had a guest on, and now his name escapes me. But you know, he was with Locked On Green Bay. He wrote for them, and I queried him. I sent him a DM on Twitter and just said, "What are we getting with Morgan Burnett?" And his response was, "Green Bay didn't want him to leave. The fans didn't want him to leave. Your guys are going to love him."
That's what my buddy said, too. He said, you're going to love him as far as a player. Yeah. He was only concerned a little with the injury thing, but he also said they have 4 young safeties. We know Josh Jones is going to step in there, and there's another kid, too, that since I don't follow the Packers so closely, he said the same thing. He said, with the exception of he's like, I don't know. He was asking for more money and then ended up taking less somewhere else. Found out that market just isn't out there, and the Steelers just snapped up, I feel, a bargain by getting him. Also having Hayden. I mean, Hayden's still just a huge signing to me, and he's going to get a full training camp. Artie Burns, year 3, I think. We've said this before too, Brian. With Hayden being the 1, Burns does not have to be the cornerback 1, and as a cornerback 2, I feel like he leans more towards a 1.5, maybe. He's not quite a 1. He's not quite the top guy, but I think he's also better than a lot of teams' number 2 corners. Mike Hilton, absolutely a whole other year now, and you know, he's not just fighting for a job. He has the job and then some. I think he's fantastic. I think Cam Sutton, as long as he stays healthy, he was robbed of half a year last year. They have a stable of cornerbacks that are just awesome. Sean Davis regressed last year as far as safety play. How much of that is playing next to Mike Mitchell? I don't know. We'll see what happens there. J.J. Wilcox is a backup. You could do worse. I think. So they're going to be all right there. They draft a safety or bring somebody else aboard. I don't know that they need to go searching for cornerbacks this year. I think the secondary sets up the defense to be better than last year. As far as we can get into the linebackers too, but most of those guys returning, losing Shazier hurts. But the defensive line, all those guys are back, and they were, you can't get much better than Cam Hayward's year last year. So I like where they're trending right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the glaring area of need still remains at inside linebacker, even with the Bostic signing. Yes, it's an upgrade over Sean Spence. It's an upgrade over LJ Fort. It's an upgrade over Tyler Matakevich. It's a guy who can be a consistent quality starter. But John Bostic is probably, a little more Vince Williams and a lot less Ryan Shazier. Mm-hmm. So when I look at the defense as it stands right now, are they better than when they walked off the field against Jacksonville last year? I think they are. Absolutely. I will go out as far as say they absolutely are a better core group with Bostic and Burnett than they were when they were on the field against Jacksonville with Mitchell and the triumvirate of people trying to replace Ryan Shazier. So they're definitely a better group that way. Are they better than when they had Ryan Shazier on the field? I don't think so.
No.
But this is still an improvement. And like I said, it frees them up to deal with what they need to deal with in the draft without forcing their hand to say, look, we know we need inside linebacker help, but the value is all gone because Tennessee took Rashaan Evans in front of us, dag on them. And now all the top 4 guys are gone, and we don't want to reach. We'd rather get a safety, or we'd rather get a running back because we know Bell's going to be gone, or another wide receiver because we know next year probably Martavis Bryant is going to be gone. So I think it gives them a lot more freedom, and they need it because they have a limited number of picks.
They do have a limited number of picks, and one thing, the exercise I was working on, and it's for a piece that'll land on Monday. We may even do a podcast on this as well, was a way too early 53-man roster projection. And the reason I want to mention it now is for what you just said with limited amount of picks. Many moons ago, the Steelers had a limited amount of picks and shuffled a few of them around and moved up and got a gentleman by the name of Troy Polamalu in the draft. They moved up in order to do that. I think they only ended up with 5 draft picks that entire year. And as I look up and down the roster, I was struggling with, if they have 7 picks, 2 of those being 7th rounders, so kind of a stretch if those 7th rounders would definitely make the roster. But let's just say all 7 picks end up making the roster. There's 2 5s and there's 2 7s. I said, and the more and more I look at it, some of the names you may leave off, like a Fitzgerald Toussaint, a Cody Sensabaugh, a Darius Hayward-Bay, or Eli Rogers, if they go the wide receiver route, if they go the running back route, Jordan Dangerfield, if they go a safety route. I don't know about, corners. I said Sensabaugh because it's got 6 corners legitimately can make the roster, and I look at it, and I don't see as many linebackers. I mean, Chicolo is a tendered, restricted free agent, whatever. What's it? There's no Arthur Moats there, so they have like 8 linebackers if you include like a draft pick. So they definitely need an inside linebacker. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It depends on the edge rushers. If you feel comfortable with Chicolo and then Keon Adams, last year's 7th round pick who was on injured reserve and didn't really get to play or show anything, we'll see. He got kind of a red shirt season last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the linebackers. But my point in mentioning all this with the juggling of the roster is that they've got guys that they don't necessarily, if you feel those guys don't need to be cut. Those guys don't play, any of those guys that I named don't play a whole lot to begin with. They would be coming in a reserve role if there were injury or you're giving a guy a break, a breather, or the games get out of control, out of hand, there's a blowout, and you start pulling some of your starters so they don't get hurt. I think they might be able to make a move for somebody like an Evans, or let's say how much they like Justin Reed, because remember, they're picking at 28. This was the thing we were talking about with the quarterback thing being a possibility. A running back could be a possibility. How many teams are putting stock in running backs? I don't know that a receiver is a necessity, especially with one Juju Smith-Schuster roaming around on the field now out there. I think they could get by with just another body, like a Justin Hunter type pickup from last year, who isn't with the team, by the way, just to mention that. Maybe they can make a move just to move up 8 picks in the draft or something to get ahead of somebody like Tennessee that might be eyeballing the same type of player, have the same type of interest in somebody. If they feel that that type of player is worth moving up, they don't move up very often. And the last few times they did make a move, it was to get Polamalu, it was to get Ben Roethlisberger. So I wonder if they get, that itch or that trigger figure. Now, they'll also mention they were drafting a little bit more in the middle of the draft and moved up a lot higher in the draft to maybe get those type of guys. So there's still something to be said about that. How much value and how much are you giving away? Could you give away a 5th or a 7th and swap a 1 in order to just move up those few spots? There might be a few teams that are in building mode that might be interested in doing something like that. So a lot of people say trade back, get more picks. I don't know that necessarily that the 28th pick overall is going to be that enticing unless somebody really feels that they need a 5th-year option on a player like one of these quarterbacks that could be in that spot that we talked about on a previous show. So I don't know, man. It's going to be intriguing going forward. We just know kind of where they're starting to angle, and they have the freedom to go just about anywhere in the draft.
Yeah, they really do. I agree with you. Here's the thing. This is definitely a draft where if the guy they want falls close enough to where they think they can get, moving up is the right thing to do. Moving back in this draft is a lot less productive than it would be, say, last year when the draft was so deep in a lot of positions. A lot of positions the Steelers need are a top tier, and then it falls off heavily. This is not nearly as deep a draft in a lot of key positions. Even though there's decent guys, you start to get past the top 5 guys, and you have a severe drop off in things like safety and in things like edge, where it might not even be the top 5 guys. You may only have 3 guys that are really worthy of being a 1st or 2nd round pick. So it's nowhere near as stocked a draft, except maybe at quarterback. But it'll be interesting to see. I think this is a good draft for them to try and move up. I think it's going to cost them more than a 5th and a 7th, though, or a 5th or a 7th to do it. Just my gut instinct. If they really want to move up, I think to get any of the main guys, they're going to have to move into the teens, and maybe the low teens, but still the teens. Not like 11, 12, but maybe 16, 17. And to do that, I think that their best bet is going to be a 1 and a 3 or a 1 and a future 2.
Ooh, future 2. That's funny. I almost said a future 3. That was the other thing I was saying when I said like a 5 or a 7, move up a few spots. You know what I mean? I wasn't looking to go up in the teens. You're absolutely right, though. You got to have a lot more value there, and they don't have the ammunition unless they just skip out on the 3rd round this season, which I don't know. I don't see them necessarily doing that because they don't have a 4th rounder. But could they mortgage a little bit of the future and dump off a 2019 pick? I think that could probably happen. They could have some more trades up their sleeve too, with some of the depth that they had. And then there was a YouTube comment like maybe about a week or so ago asking about a sign and trade and dumping Bell off to the New York Giants and getting something there, which I don't know. I don't know how appealing that looks still. There's a cap savings, but then there's Bell could be the greatest of all time with the Steelers. It's just I wish he'd make a decision because it's really handcuffing them on a lot of things where they could be more creative with the cap and get this team in a position to win a Super Bowl. Instead, we're going to have some shenanigans maybe again where somebody sits out the entire training camp, and this could be their last season because, you know what, it's not good enough just playing on the tag and making a boatload of money off the tag number. I need that long-term deal, and I need it to be big, big, big money, double more than what anybody else is paying. And the Steelers are going to look at that and say, I don't know how I can invest this much in one position when they've already got guys making a lot of money at some other positions, Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger, etc. There's only so many guys you could pay at the top before the rest of the roster suffers. You got to have 22 guys, and beyond that, you need depth because, in today's NFL, Nothing's for certain. The standard's the standard, but only for so long. You know what I mean? We saw that's where those 8-8 seasons came from. They didn't have enough depth when some of these guys got hurt, and then the guys that they had that got hurt anyway, or the guys that were starting, weren't of sufficient quality to produce a winning football team either. So I still like where they're at. I still think they're the class of the AFC North. I don't care how many moves the Browns made. That only means they might jump ahead of Cincinnati or Baltimore at this point. There's still a lot to go, though. A lot to go. So any of these projections and all the things we're speculating on, we still got the draft coming up, and then you still got camp, and then, you know what? They actually have to play games and execute. So it'll be fun to see where they end up.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're going to have a fun time when we get to the draft, and then we get to essentially sit and speculate until July 14th, when the deal with Bell is either done or not. And I think you can pretty much, put it in the bank that if they don't get a deal done by then, this is his last year.
Yeah, it's starting to look like more of a reality, and I wonder if they don't angle that way in the draft. But you know what? Next show is always the next show. We'll have things to talk about. That'll be one of them. So otherwise, you know what? You could bring Zach Meckler back on. You guys could talk for 2.5 hours about whatever. So actually, you didn't even go that long with Zach. You went over an hour. It was those other guys. What was this show?
That was the I don't remember what it was, but they were good guys. They just loved to talk football, and we talked forever
and talked. And if I would have been on there, it would have been a 4-hour show. So I think that's telling us right now that it's time to say goodbye. We'll see if there's any other moves over the weekend, and we'll catch everybody later. So, Brian, thank you. I'll thank myself too. That doesn't happen enough. And until next time, folks, be safe, be good, and we will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.